So my name is Tabitha Loudon, and I am running this Facebook Live in conversation with Shaun O'Callaghan from One Agency Torquay. Also, I feel a little bit remiss. I haven't done an acknowledgement of country for the last 3 episodes, so I would just like to acknowledge that I live and work on Wadawurrung land, and I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging for taking care of this land, which was never ceded. I'd like to introduce Shaun, who I've been interested in finding out more about for a little while. First of all, when I found out that he had a meditation practice, and then recently finding out more about ideas through his staff about the business ethics that he uses to run his organisation, and then finding out more about some of the work that he's done locally in the community with mental health, running various events and being involved with talks about mental health awareness. So welcome to Shaun, and just wondering, also this live will go from 7 to 7:30, so I'd like to jump straight in and ask Shaun about what are some of the practices that you use to keep your well-being good.
Thanks, Tabsy. It's a big piece, the remaining centred, and as a lot of people would be confronted with lots of changes, particularly at the moment, and lots of challenges, and a lot of those are between the years as well. And some of the practices that I've followed have just held me in really good stead through turmoil and struggle and difficulties, and without question, the difficulties and challenges are necessary to help the birthing of ideas and practices that enable one to remain more centred. So, there's that old concept of, the challenge is equal to the person's capabilities of managing the challenge as well. Yeah. And everyone's going through, very different challenges. I find for myself that irrespective of what's going on out there in the world or in my world, and what I'm confronted with, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, I still do my very best to maintain some morning practices. So meditation formed a big part of that for quite a long period of time, but I've always tinkered with those as we were chatting during the week. Found that not so much a sense of restlessness that goes with those practices, but deeper curiosity around expanding, because it is never ending, the journey towards greater self-awareness and discovery. And those morning, I think there's something magical about the morning as well. We've also got greater control of the morning, less so once my kids wake up, and I've done very well at training them to wake up at 7. So sometimes 6:45. So fortunately I've got that time in the morning, so I start quite early, a little bit before 5. Yeah. And I try not to use any brain power, so I've just got things set up so that I know exactly what to do. Everything's in its place, glass of water, what I want to listen to. At the moment, sort of a walking meditation for me, and involves some activities for about 30 minutes, and then some physical activity, journaling, reflection, reading. Do my very best to work on, a concept around that gratitude and coming from that place, which is, I think we sometimes get lost in gratitude and the concept of that new world approach to gratitude, which is, I'll be grateful and then it's done. Yeah. Yeah. Whereas coming from the place of bliss within the concept of gratitude creates a greater resonance. Yeah. And greater commitment to discovering what the gratitude is. Yeah. And I think I find for myself, when I'm in gratitude, I'm not in fear, and I'm not in loss and blame and shame and comparing, and it's the simple things, and those simple things are sometimes just how I might interact with my kids or my wife, or I see something, or my dog does something, or I taste something. It doesn't have to be monumental. Yeah.
And when you use these practices, like what I see with you is that you not only have that internal reflection, but you put that into action as well. Like you're putting it into action with your business, but you're also putting it into action with the community and getting some really great things happening with the community. And what I wonder is that you seem like, you know, you've had financial security from when you were quite young because you started working when you were young. You've got a family, you've got a house, you're in a community that you feel really connected with. So what I'm wondering is, have you got any ideas? But because when you're in that good spot, it's easier to have the motivation and the energy to just keep doing those things that'll keep you high. But when you're not, it's much harder. You don't have the energy. You might know that you need to do these things, but you don't have the motivation to do them. Have you got any ideas from when you've been in a more difficult spot? What did you do? Like, you know, I have heard about this time that you went, I think, up to New South Wales when you were in a more difficult time. Can you talk a little bit about how did you get yourself to be motivated enough to do the good practices to get yourself out of that spot?
Yeah, so I experienced an event that was quite challenging. So on the scale of challenging, you know, at that particular time was, it had a bit on it. And so the result was for me to pack my car and drive to Queensland.
Yeah.
I did go through New South Wales, but I didn't stay there. But I ended up in Queensland, and I just needed to, it was not so much escape, but it was, you know, perhaps it was in some aspects, but it was solitude. I was alone, and just had to really find a way to not descend into a darker place than I already was. And so with that, it was triggered by this experience that I won't go into exactly what that was, but it was the only solution I had was to get away. Otherwise, my actions would have resulted in, you know, just wouldn't have been very good for anyone. And so with that experience, there was insomnia, and there was, you know, just horrible kind of, you know, dark feelings and all these sorts of things. And, you know, I now reflect on that and look back at it, and I can almost feel it in myself now. So it never really goes, you know, that residue of those experiences never really leaves. And I think there's a point where, and far be it from me a mental health professional or anything like that, but the decision I made, and you know, I'm fortunate I have a very loving family as well. And my mum said, she goes, "Hey, Shaun, I think you need help."
Yeah.
And because I really respected her opinion and I respected her insights, I thought it was cowardice. I thought I was weak by doing that. But I guess when you're up against these, you know, these forces, it was almost forces that were all within. And I'd created this environment that I was in my head that was, the escape route wasn't clear to me at all. And so I put my hand up and I went and sought professional help. And so I think it was a counsellor initially, and then I'd always been into sort of understanding energy a bit deeper and a curiosity around that, and then that led me on a path to wanting to continue to explore. So not so much easy for me now, but I look back on that experience and those experiences and other ones as well, Tabsy, but that was the genesis of change, and that was, without that I wouldn't have sought greater meaning. And I wouldn't have sought, you know, deeper fulfillment and meaning that goes with struggle. So, you know, and I'm not saying that I understand anyone else's position, but I think something that we need to have a greater grasp of is the ability to accept struggle, and it's necessary as well. So the concept of polarity, you know, the two, positive and negative, how can you possibly have one without the other? And so the likes of where I sort of come from now is in this concept of, you know, between B, birth, and D, death, lives C, which is the choice. And so out of all of these experiences, I'm constantly thinking of choice, and that choice is to feel better, not happy. Okay, so happy is fleeting and happy doesn't sustain. Contentment sustains, but happy's sold to us that it should be this, you know, perpetual feeling that's always on. It's just not. It's not supposed to be that way. It's just not the way the brain works. And so, you know, the concept of choice is choosing to feel better. So I read a lot of things at the moment. There's some dark stuff out there. You know, there's some it's always there, but it seems like a culmination of things at the moment. It's easy to descend into that, but does that feel good?
Yeah.
And so the willingness to choose and become match fit at having an understanding of thought. So in terms of the practice that could be helpful for those, or I found for myself, was just catching those thoughts that were not in tune with the truth of who we really are, which is a being that wants to experience good things.
Yeah.
And so capturing those thoughts and cancelling them, and doing my best to cancel it, like, cancel, no, not that one.
Yeah.
I'm heading in that direction, no. And if I can offer any insights, because I go to a lot of homes, talk to a lot of people, and real estate is not really sort of, people don't quite understand this, but you're involved in people's lives all the time, and really heavy duty emotional experiences. And I can assure you, after 15 years in real estate, Tabsy, I've spoken to a lot of people, I've experienced a lot of people behind the front door, and most people are struggling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most people have their challenges, and one of the difficult things is for someone that is in a really low frequency place at the moment is it's the comparison and looking at the outward for a solution, like they have that or they're experiencing those things. And I can tell you, if you peel back the layers on that individual that you might hold as someone that might have everything in check, they don't.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah.
And so, not that we want that, but it's a sense of everyone's finding their feet and finding their way. But without doubt, some of the principles that are really important to this is finding a better feeling.
Yeah.
And there's like this spiral of feelings, and they spiral up and down, and it's choosing a better one, which is easy to say and hard to do. Yeah.
I'm wondering whether, because you've been involved in the 50-year storm as well, so you're obviously a big wave surfer, and I'm wondering whether there's any correlation between what you do, the courage within surfing, like even just that choice at the beginning when you're on that massive wave and you've got the choice to push yourself into it or to pull back off it. Does that, like, that seems like an embodied decision, and does that then lead into other things within your life to have more of it, because you've got that pathway of, yes, I will choose to go into the challenge. Does that then translate to other things in your life that might be difficult, more emotional or spiritual or mental choices that you've got to choose to go in and get through that challenge, and knowing that you're going to rise up again at the other side of it?
Yeah, there's a lot in that. The concept that comes to mind at the moment when you talk about those things is, and look, you got to get the scale of big wave surfing, like around here and what have you, is different to. Anyway, but yeah, I do enjoy the surf when it's a bit more challenging and bigger and what have you. And it, I was lucky to have friends that was what they love to do, and I sort of fell into that as well in a way. I'm not a very good surfer, but that's what I enjoy, and I really do. It's really a great experience. But the thing with that is that it's the concept of choosing courage over comfort.
Yeah.
And so this thing where we're all looking for safe instead of living, like at the moment, let's just bubble wrap everything, and safe is better than life. And I challenge that, like, I mean, yeah, sure, there's some dangerous things that can happen, but to the detriment of what? Like surfing those experiences where, there's sometimes, and they're quite challenging, and there might be some, not so much touch and go, but very committed decisions when, it's a little bit out of your control, and that's a good thing, to have things that you're not in control. I mean, we control nature, and we've pushed nature to one side, and we lose that connection, and that's one of the fabulous things about the ocean is that mass, immense energy is, it's hard to describe, but life often has a correlation there as well, and I think if we can be willing to choose things that are uncomfortable, then you just get better at dealing with challenges. So it does cross-pollinate into life.
Yeah. And also, I'm interested in finding out a little bit about where your practices came from. Like, where did you actually start going into these different spiritual ideas? And also, how has that then, like, because there's the practice of being spiritual and thinking about what's happening and being very conscious about what's happening in your life, but then you've also put that into action and you've done a whole lot of great community things with mental health. So have you got particular people that have led you into that pathway, and can you talk a little bit about that? You're obviously someone who wants to give back a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I write something down almost every day, and that's that I'm interacting and around inspiring and amazing people, and so therefore my radar's on for that. So I'm looking for it. So this would be one of those experiences. Yep. Thank you, Tabs, for being amazing and inspiring.
Thank you.
And so so therefore, because I focus on that, that's what I see more of.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be someone fabulous that's shooting the lights out in life and doing all those amazing things. It's just, it's small interactions as well. But because I'm searching for it, I see it. And so if that concept in itself is something that is born out of, I think there's some great teachers out there. In fact, at the moment, one that I'm sort of gone back to is Neil Donald Walsh. So the Conversations with God books, and everyone has different connotations as to what God means. And I think we need to make sort of delineate what religion is and what God is. And so in the instance of these books it creates a sense of impermanence with life. Okay, we hold on so tight to the day-to-day and acquiring and attaining things and having experiences, which is awesome and amazing, but then we're on borrowed time, and that's sort of coming back to that concept of safe versus living. We just really avoid the concept and discussion of death and that impermanence. And maybe it's because at 44 years of age now, you sort of start to look at half time, perhaps, I don't know. Yeah. But really it is that concept that, okay, we wonder what is beyond, I wonder what that, I'm not necessarily going to get the answers. I'm not sure anyone has those, but I've really enjoyed that, and I've read them a few years ago, but I don't think I quite could grasp that. It was off the deep end a bit, and but now the deep end doesn't feel as strange.
Yeah.
So to go back over some of those books and look at the material it's really quite liberating, where you're not attached to life as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you use those ideas that you're reading about? What do you use to put that into your business? Like what I really was interested in hearing was some of your staff who really speak very highly of you and of the way that you run your business with ethics and the way that you interview your staff to choose the people that work with you. What are some of those things that you put into your business, and where did these ideas come from?
Well, real estate's a tricky one in the sense that we're well aware of what the perception of real estate is, and everyone has their own experience in real estate and have their own valid experiences. And so in terms of an environment that's difficult to run, these sorts of, what I'm talking about here today and the questions that you're asking, it's probably not known in the real estate world that it's a really essential part of, because we know we're in the crosshairs, okay? And so I'm sure there's plenty of people that would have experiences in real estate that haven't been that great. Yeah. So we work really hard knowing that that's the case to ensure that we do our very best. And our intention always is to do our very best and best for the people that are involved. Now, I'm happy with mistakes, okay? So mistakes and errors of be it judgment or whatever that may be, because if the intention that lies behind the mistakes and errors, and quite often you don't know it's an error until later on, or a mistake. Yeah. And could it have been done differently? Yeah, for sure, from time to time. But I'm always very confident in everyone that works in our office that their intention is in the right place. Okay, so we talk really openly about energy and how we're feeling. We want to maintain a sense of freshness, because with our world that we're in, the real estate world that is it's pretty highly charged, and sometimes people can lose the best part of their rational thinking from time to time. And it makes it hard for the clients to have to navigate that experience as well. So in our office, we are very it's a fast-paced world, but we're also doing our best to connect with one another as well.
Yeah.
You know, looking for that consistent sort of value chain in what we do, and also how we act and how we interact. We're sort of big believers in how we carry ourselves, and the energy that we are carrying will translate. And so therefore we might not necessarily say the right words, but again, if the intention's in the right place, then I'm completely comfortable with, you know, how we go about things in the office. And then in terms of, you know, appointing people and working with those that are looking to start with us, we want to spend time with them to understand what makes them tick, who they look up to, and how they would, you know, how they would fit. You know, the right people. And I've said this before, and I say it in our office as well, I love driving up the driveway at our office and seeing the cars that are there, because I just, there's no cars in the driveway in our office where I go, oh, I wish that car wasn't there.
No, it's a really good point about intention, and an Indigenous elder gave me that point a long time ago when I was asking him. It was about sharing ideas and being judged in Indigenous circles about sharing those ideas. And he said, what you've really got to make sure you do in anything is just, if you get up there and make your intention clear from the beginning, then there's a lot less likelihood that people will take you the wrong way or get the wrong idea of what you're doing. So
Isn't that right?
Yeah, so true. We're almost near the end. I wanted to ask another question, which it is a difficult question, but because you're someone in the real estate industry, and I've been talking to a couple more people today actually about the community that we live in, and house prices are going up, and there are a lot of people who I know who have added a lot to this community, and are no longer able to buy in this area, and even finding it difficult to find a place to rent, especially, you know, if you've got a family, it makes it harder. To share sometimes is easier, but when you've got a family, that becomes difficult. Have you got any answers on what's going on? And it's not just in this area. There's lots of places around Australia where prices are going up and up, and it becomes harder for people to have a place where they live that they know they will have the security of being able to live there for a long time and not have the difficulty of moving from place to place to place, which again affects your well-being and your mental health. What have you got to say about answers on that?
Yeah, that is a gigantic topic, isn't it? I think the difficulty, you make that point about having to move regularly and the instability that goes with that, and you know, we're talking about these fundamentals of well-being, which is, you know, community and interaction, and, you know, obviously, you know, food and shelter being part of that as well, you know, love and contribution, and, you know, stability around shelter, and not just shelter but a home and community, is something that's absolutely essential to well-being. And there's not a great answer. I think those commercial gears that move through real estate are such that they're hard to so if it came to, you know, affordable living and affordable housing and so forth, it really, the only antidote to the commercial side of things is really someone or an entity that's philanthropic. And the commercial reality is that anyone who's involved with, you know, real estate or putting money on the line and some risk that goes with that, they're going to look for a return. So therefore, for someone to step in and make it more affordable, let's say, for example, in this 3228 postcode or along the coast or any other areas where it's becoming in high demand, is it's a steward, it's someone that is willing to step in and create that, who's got the financial capacity and resources to be able to do it. Which is, it's such a difficult topic, Tabsy, because I know for even just for us at the moment in this past few weeks, particularly the past week, the rental inquiry has gone through the roof. I imagine that, you know, I've even heard of people who are moving down during this COVID time, and it's just, you know, they're in the middle of Melbourne or something, and they just think, right, I am actually going to do it now. I've had enough, and I'm going to move down the coast where I can have some more lifestyle. Which is one of the parts to the area is community.
Yeah.
And so you're a big part of it, and you grew up in Janjuk and Torquay, and you want to be here for as long as you want to be here, and it becomes really difficult. So therefore you're one of the stewards of the community, you're part of it, and your father and your brother and family and sister, like your family's been a big part of that. And then to maintain a foothold here can be tricky, and yet what you guys have been a part of and created is what other people are seeking. Right? And so a lot of people who are coming here, let's say, as you said, coming out of Melbourne, either through rental or buying property, is that they're searching for deeper meaning, and it comes through community. So some of them don't even know that. But yet that's what the yearning is. You know, I hear about these people that don't talk to their neighbours in Melbourne, or they put their shoes out the front and they get stolen. You know, just the car gets gone through and no one talks to their neighbours, and people aren't connecting. And one of the fundamentals of well-being is for human beings to interact, to be dependent on one another. Not this stuff that's going on now, independence and separation and split up and subdivided and put to one side. And it's just not how it's unnatural, right? The natural need for human beings is to connect and share and discourse and be involved and support. And it's a tough time for that, when it costs $500 a week to be able to do that in Torquay to rent, or you know, $800,000 to buy a house. I mean, it's tough. But I guess, you know, out of that, if that's what spurs people on to seek to improve that financial position, whatever it may be. I mean, there's benefits in that as well, but you know, it's probably a pendulum that'll never quite be balanced, unfortunately.
As we finish up, I'd love to hear from you, just because as I was saying before, you know, sometimes it is more difficult to take on some of these practices that are good for your well-being when you're in a difficult place. What can you give just one example of a simple practice that someone who might be watching right now who is in a difficult place, something very simple and easy, a routine that you can then build on that will help, that you found to help bring you back? Something that might just, you know, stick with somebody, whether it's to do with reflection or morning time, or even because it's also harder to connect with your community when you're in that state as well, and connecting with your community again is something that can help you on that spiral to bring you back up. So like, how do you talk to someone when you don't feel like talking to somebody?
Yeah, for sure. Look, there's a couple of really important points. I think fundamentally is the willing to want to change. Okay, and unless someone has that, you can't change someone from the outside. That change and that burning desire has got to come from within. And if you haven't got that, then you've got to find it. Okay, and that just comes from a choice. Choosing, wanting, a burning desire to want to feel better and make a change. And if that means initially, if someone's in crisis mode, then it's professional help without question. Number one. Had I not have done that, then I don't know what would have happened. But I'm glad I did. And I've done it a number of times. A simple practice, and I think it's really important to understand this, that all of this stuff compounds. So negativity compounds, and negative thoughts and negative information that is being input compounds. Equally positive. So if it's about relief from those feelings. How do I get that? What's the next thing I could do to get some relief? First things first is, one principle is not going to make all the changes, but over a series of days or weeks, yes, it will. There's one that's really good. Okay, so, and it's the 4 square breathing. And within 30 seconds, there's a slightly different state. For some people, it's a more substantial state change. So it's inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, inhale. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4 seconds. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Inhale. So do that for a minute, and without a doubt, your state will change.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that,
No worries,
Shaun.
Tamsy.
This is awesome. And yes, thank you very much for your vulnerability, and thanks for all the awesome things that you're doing in the community.
And if I can help in any way, or anyone wants to have a chat or anything like that, more than happy. So
awesome. So if
Thanks,
you have
mate.
any questions, put them up, and we'll see if we can get Shaun to answer them.
No worries. Thanks again.
Thank you.